Do you want to scale your real estate portfolio more quickly by accessing all of the equity that you've built up in your properties over time without paying a capital gains tax? Well, the 1031 exchange is the powerful tool that you're going to use to be able to do that. And today, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know in only about 10 minutes. Welcome to Beechmont Breakdown. I'm Ryan Brown. We are decoding real estate investing, and today I want to talk about the 1031 exchange. Okay, so let's start with the basics. What is a 1031 exchange? Now, it's sometimes called a like-kind exchange, but essentially what it allows us to do is a tax deferment strategy. Okay, deferment doesn't mean that you don't owe the tax, but it's a tax deferment strategy that allows us to exchange one property for another without realizing the capital gain on the sale. And, it's not a loophole, okay, because this is a behavior that the government wants us to do. So they created this rule, this incentive to encourage us to just continue to reinvest and to continue to reinvest. Okay, and so it's not a loophole. It's a rule that we're supposed to be taking advantage of. And it is important to note that it is a tax deferment strategy. It doesn't mean that you don't owe the tax, that we are deferring the tax so that it would be due on the sale of the next one. Now, one strategy that is kind of used with the 1031 exchange is that you just continue to exchange and exchange and exchange, but that's kind of further down the road. And so it is a tax deferment strategy. It doesn't mean that I don't owe the tax, but it allows me to reinvest the money now and defer the tax until later when I actually realize that capital. Okay, so how does the 1031 exchange work? Here are just a couple of steps. The first thing you're going to do is obviously you're going to sell your original property. You're going to get that property under contract, and typically you want to disclose to your buyer that you intend to do a 1031 exchange with this. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to contact whichever title companies or attorney or whoever you're going to be using. You're going to let them know that you intend to do a 1031 exchange. And what you're going to need is someone called a qualified intermediary. And this person is going to typically be at the title company, an attorney, someone like that, that is going to be there to ensure that you follow all of the rules of the 1031 exchange. And they're also going to hold your funds in the escrow account. And so when you go to the closing of your original property, you actually don't get the money. You don't get any of the money. And so you close on the property, you sign everything. This qualified intermediary is going to hold the funds in an escrow account. And that way they ensure that you're not distributing anything out and the money gets reinvested the way it's supposed to. And so as soon as you close, now you're on the clock. Okay, and there are a couple of significant timelines to go along with the 1031 exchange that you're going to have to make sure that you follow. And the first one, and this is like where people fail their 1031 exchange. The first one is that you've got 45 days to identify replacement property. And the reason I say that this is where people fail their 1031 exchange is because if you can't find a deal that works for you in this 45-day span, well, then you're not going to have anywhere to put your money, and you're just going to end up having to eat the capital gains tax because you don't actually get reinvested within that time. So it's really important to keep in mind that time frame. I actually have a friend who last year had a couple $100,000 that he was looking, and he failed his 1031 exchange and just felt like he would be better off just paying the capital gains tax than buying something that he didn't actually want. Now, the second piece of the timeline here is you have 180 days to close on the property. And so this should say that if I've got 45 days from the closing of my original property to identify, well, then within 6 months, I need to actually be closed on the replacement property. And so that should give you enough time to conduct your due diligence and everything like that. And so the way it's going to work is you're just going to, obviously, whenever you get the new property under contract, let the sellers know that you're doing a 1031 exchange. And then you go to the closing, the qualified intermediary brings all of your funds, and all of that money gets reinvested into the next property. And then that allows you to defer the tax on the gain that you made on the original property. So what type of properties qualify for a 1031 exchange? Well, essentially, they call it like kind, but real estate is real estate. And so I can exchange a single family home for multifamily. I can exchange multifamily for some other type of commercial property, yada, yada, yada. So real estate is real estate. And I can even exchange from property that I own personally into a syndication. And just like what we talked about a few minutes ago with that 45-day time period, the ability to jump into and move your funds into a syndication deal can help you if you're struggling to find something locally that you're going to own and operate yourself. You can jump into another deal, and that way you don't miss your 1031 exchange, because then you have access to so much more. Now, the main thing that you need to keep in mind whenever you're looking at a 1031 is that your property needs to be used for business or investment purposes. You're not going to be able to 1031 exchange on your own home or a second home or something like that. The primary use of the property needs to be business or investment purpose. But as we know, if you're talking about your personal home, you shouldn't need to 1031 because if you've been there for at least 2 years out of the last 5, then you're not going to owe taxes on that money anyway. So we love cost segregation. We love bonus depreciation. 2 extraordinarily important tax strategies that, pretty much everyone operating in the space is going to employ. But what that means is that it makes a 1031 exchange even more necessary. Now, the reason that is that because, let's say that you buy $1 million property and we're going to aggressively depreciate that property. We're going to take all that depreciation in basically the initial year of acquisition. Well, when we go sell the property, if we've already taken $300,000, $400,000 of depreciation, that's going to change the cost basis of the property. And so let's say that I sell for 1.5 million after I bought it for $1 million, and now I'm going to sell for 1.5 million. Well, my cost basis is not going to be $1 million because of what I paid for it. My cost basis is going to be what I paid for it, and I can add on capital improvements or things like that. But then I've got to take that depreciation reduces my cost basis. And so if I've taken $400,000 of depreciation, my cost basis is going to be $600,000 and I'm selling for 1.5 million. And this is why the 1031, if you are using these strategies like cost segregation and bonus depreciation, and you should be using those strategies. So if you are using those strategies, then the necessity to be able to 1031 into the next investment becomes even more important because we are aggressively depreciating, which is lowering our cost basis the entire time. So what are some misconceptions about a 1031 exchange? Well, the first is that it does not mean that you say, dodging the taxes completely. What we're doing is just kicking the can down the road a little bit, and we are deferring taxes to the future. And that's still a really good thing because you have the naysayers when you talk about a 1031 exchange will say, oh, well, you still owe the tax, you still owe it. Well, yeah, but my money is more valuable to me being able to reinvest it than it is if I have to give it to the government. And so if I can wait and give it to them later and I can reap the benefits of investing that money now, then it is much more valuable to me. And so just the fact that it is deferral is still a really excellent strategy. Now, where it becomes even more powerful, and perhaps maybe another myth, is some people may think that you can just exchange it once. No. The play here is to just kind of continue. You just exchange and you exchange and you exchange. And if at any point you're looking and you need to pull cash out on a property, well, you can still just exchange. And then after the deal is done, you can get a loan off of the asset and then you can pull cash out that way because that's a loan. It's not income, so you're not going to be taxed. And so that's the strategy. And you can just kind of exchange all the way until you die. And then what's beautiful about it is that after you die, whoever inherits this property from you is going to get a step up in the cost basis to the current market value. And so, yes, you can just exchange all the way up until you die. So what are some alternatives to the 1031 exchange? Well, the first one, and I say that we use a 1031 exchange as a way to more aggressively grow your real estate portfolio by cashing in on the equity. So the first alternative to a 1031 exchange is probably just a cash out refi. Now, you're going to go a little faster when you're actually selling the property and then 1031ing because I'm going to access 100% of my equity. Whereas if I go to a bank and I cash out refi, well, they might give me 75, 80% of the appraised value of the property. But if I sell, I'm assuming I'm probably going to sell at 100% of the value. And so I'm going to end up accessing more of the equity that I can then turn around and reinvest. And so, a cash out refi is an excellent strategy, but the 1031 enables you to access more of your equity that you turn around and reinvest. Now, from another seller standpoint, seller financing is a way that you can sell your property, still be collecting money off of it, and dodge that big capital gains tax because you aren't actually collecting all of the money up front. And so that can be a significant strategy. And lastly, and this is kind of probably a whole other conversation, you can invest in opportunity zones. And now opportunity zones afford the ability to dodge some of the capital gains tax because it's another behavior that the government is looking to incentivize in people to invest, an investor to put money into distressed areas. And so they allow them to put this money in distressed areas. And if you hold it for a certain number of time period, well, then you don't have to pay any capital gains tax. And so that's a whole other thing, but it is just another strategy that's kind of alternative to the 1031. And there you have it. A quick breakdown on the 1031 exchange, how we use it, why we use it, and, just how powerful of a vehicle this is. And it can really accelerate your growth when you're able to capitalize on all of that equity and then turn around and just go bigger and go bigger and go bigger every time you exchange.